Okay, I was sent this by one of my trolls that get on my site, and even though they're totally debunked during these videos, you wouldn't believe it, but they actually just start yapping lies even in the face of a video. And they claim that I don't know anything whenever they show themselves to not know anything. We're going to look at this black person that he claims a PhD, and it's Sarah Derbu, right? And we're talking about blacks in Greek art. Okay, so we can get our presence here. She has a little article she's done here, an investigation of black figures in classical Greek art. Ancient Greeks' visual heritage included representations of black people that nimbly provoked and cut across hierarchies. Oh boy. Well, let's see this, something about her. What is her PhD in? Let's see, Sarah Derbu. I am a PhD candidate. Oh, so you're just starting your final thing at best. You're not a PhD, you're a PhD candidate in classics at Yale University. My dissertation entitled The Meta Theater of Blackness, looking at and through black skin color in ancient Greek literature and art. I'm going to guess that she's a black person and in her jealousy is trying to implicate herself into any other civilization other than being a recent West African primitive. She says it presents an interconnected argument about the capacity for critical theorizations of race in the Greek Mediterranean from the 5th century BC to the 4th century CE. So, in other words, yes, she's trying to claim that blacks were Greeks. My current research interests include Greek tragedy, Greek novel, and the Herodotian ethnography. And if we look at what blacks say about Herodotus and misconstrue that, it's quite disgusting. I wonder if she got any play on this on her dissertation or not. So you look at this vase here, and you could say, yeah, that has Negroid features on it. Uh, Not only big lips and things and a slightly broad nose, but it seems to have little Bantu knots all over the head, although some of them seem to have been knocked off. It's like they put little divots around on it whenever they fired it, and of course some of those got knocked off later and everything. But is this actually even a Negro? Well, it may not be. I mean, just to be honest with you, they have Greek art where they show them in pale colors, in red ochre, and in black symbology, and she's fixing to show it and actually claim Hercules, believe it or not, and things. So it kind of is very telling too. But we've always agreed that this is the head of a Negroid. It's just a pitcher that they have there, a water pitcher that they have found, and it rates to about 500 BC or so. So what does she say? In ancient Greek, men often escaped their daily grind to socialize at symposium or formally drinking parties. In the symposium, revelers indulged in numerous leisure activities centered around the consumption of wine. Among the variety of ceramic vessels that were used, pitchers of many shapes and sizes enabled wine pourers to fill the drinker's cup. One example is this Oinoko, now on display in the Athenian Vases Gallery at Getty Villa. And so, yeah, okay, head of an African man, prognostic, short hair, kind of Bantu knots. Shows it to be a lighter color, and Negroids don't have blonde hair, of course. So this shows you that they use colors in weird ways and things, and they want to designate hair versus this versus that. And they have symbology to their colors and stuff. So, yeah, it's not a blonde Negro, of course. But, yeah, we can see that that's a Negroid. But if they did it all in black, that wouldn't be as cool. This head-shaped wine pitcher invites numerous questions. The first is quite simply how to describe it. How can curators responsibly and comprehensively create a label for this pitcher? Yeah, in a modern PC world, everybody wants guilt freak out. Is this face best characterized as black, African, or black glazed? Oh no, can you use terms for color without having SJW freakouts? Is the world going to blow up just because you use the term black? No, everything's okay, but yep. The term black is unsuitable, she says, because it transports our modern color politics into antiquity. The transatlantic slave trade has permanently mangled any attempt to use this color objectively. We can no longer talk about the colors of the spectrum without blacks being yip. That's terrible. For I'm going to continue and say that all the letters on this paper are black, and that paper is white. But white people aren't the color of paper. I'm about the color of an Egyptian. And this is all quite pathetic. The geographical marker African initially seems like a sound alternative. Unlike the historical weight of black, using the name of a continent seems to sidestep the retrojection of slavery's violent history. No, and actually it'd be an incorrect term, for North Africans are still Caucasians, and before the slave trade and things, it was always all perpetually Caucasians all across North Africa. And then the Arabs came in with the Islamic slave trade and everything, and that's what began it and got blacks into this area. Sure, there were some Nilotics up there that the Egyptians had to go against called Nubians, but Nubians aren't related to West African primitives, and West African primitives didn't know Egypt existed or Rome or anything along that line, and we'll be able to see that plainly here just coming up. She says, other than this violent history that it shows just by maybe saying Africa, so you can't even say words anymore, it also presents a utopian description that unites 54 countries and millions of people into a collective unity. And I think that she's indicating that, well, we can't have that. Can we, Whitey Superior? No, because a lot of those northern countries that you're trying to claim are Caucasian countries. The blacks have no unity. Khoisan are not too much enamored with the Bantu that came down and screwed them up, and they've now tried to take over South Africa, which they aren't even from that area originally, but have migrated there. It's all well known to anybody except for a jealous, lying Negroid. I hate to be so direct about these, but I can't be indirect and suave, especially whenever the words that are put towards me by this racist troll and tell me that I have to prove this or she's a Greek. You can understand the disgustment that comes across in this whenever somebody's been studying history for years, and then little Bo Yip Yip comes along and tries to tell you what everything is and that you don't know anything. It's kind of disgusting, and to watch it, it's like a 4-year-old trying to tell you about Santa Claus and that you just don't know, when it's your own kid almost. Yeah. So the notion of Africa was vague at the time of production of this vessel. It was always called Libya, so there was no even real Africa. The notion hadn't come yet, but yeah, it was named later Africa after Caucasians, and before it was Libya, named by Caucasians, and that won't be changing anytime soon. Around 500 BC, the Greek term for the region, Libya, referred generally to the northern and northeast regions of the continent. No, it referred to the whole thing. They basically just called it Libya. You'll be able to see that in just a second. So, lie again, discussed. Ethiopian was another popular term used to describe people with black skin. No, that's not true either. The etymology of Ethiopia highlights this relationship. Aethio, I blaze, ops, face. I blaze is one way of looking at this, but it really comes out to being sunburnt. Yeah, it works with things like blacksmiths and how they get soot on their face and things like that, and sunburnt faces is what it means. And man, blacks don't get sunburnt. And while they could say, oh, there was a nickname for Negroids, and that'd be disgusting for Negroids to grab a hold of that whenever they can't even handle the word black anymore. But they're going to go around giggling, calling themselves sunburnt face. Okay. So we can see in this bad version of Herodotus' map that they don't even know Sub-Saharan Africa exists down here, and that the Ethiopians are up here, and the Nile, they don't know where it starts from. That was figured out by Dr. Livingston, I presume, right? And it curves back over here. They show the Atlas Mountains over here, and it says Atlantis in a lot of the things, and it shows you where they kind of thought Atlantis was, and there's an Eye of Sahara over there, and everywhere that you're looking right here was all Caucasians. Every single bit of it. But it might be better to look at a correct representation of this. For if we just wiki it, here's Ethiopia, Ethiopia of the Greeks. And they say that it's around the Nile, but they also talked about it in the Iliad and the Odyssey and all these other places, Herodotus and so on, and refers of such parts none within the inhabitable world. Well, where could it be? Well, let's just look at the map here. Every brown spot is where they called Ethiopians at. And so now we can realize the stark truth of the reality that this little country that's up here in this area, that's called Ethiopia today, that used to be all, up until very recently, called Abyssinia, doesn't really have anything to do with what they were talking about. And whenever he saw these people, he was seeing these people along the Nile that are pretty much farmers. And there are farmers here, and in fact every single brown area here is at the end of river valleys, all through, and up here in Greek lands, all the way through to Russia, Proto-Indo-Europeans and those Scythians and all those guys. Even the Caucasus Mountains says they're Ethiopians. And then now we have the stark reality that this was actually talking about tanned and sunburnt people. Today we might refer to them as rednecks or farmers, and how they're quite a bit more tanned. And of course, people have realized this a long time ago, that the Greeks pretty much were comparing Caucasians to Caucasians in subtle amounts, and that anybody tanner than a pale Greek was referred to under a term like this. He talks about microbians being in the area now that you would think of as being Ethiopia or the Somalis, but yet back then they were a tall, pale, some blonde-haired Caucasian people that lived long lives, he says. So that's quite telling too. And with the Phoenicians all across North Africa then, and before that time, there were no Negroids there at the time. So one other telling before we even get farther into this would be the video that I just did recently, which it's sad that the Negro is putting this out there to me, for I literally debunked this, or they debunked themselves, in this video where I debunked Home Team History, and it says West and East African Connections. Now I did one before that was about him saying that the Greeks loved Ethiopians, and I explained and showed that Ethiopians and how it wasn't ever talking about Negroids ever, and how they've misconstrued it over time, and that he even uses false pictures on his vases and can't name the people. So he came out with the next video here, and he's admitting it right now that he said a lie about this, and that Andromeda, which is an Ethiopian, is this pale white woman over here. Let's zoom down just a hair and see if you can get a look at this pale white woman over here. It's kind of disgusting that he would do something like that, but worse than that, let's take a look at her. Worse than that, and it says Andromeda here, and he actually tries to claim, now strangely in his statement, he gets busted totally, and then he goes, man, you busted me, I don't know what I'm talking about on Ethiopians, and Black should stop this, it's racist and despicable. He goes, no, it still stands. You see this white lady with her long curly hair? And now get this disgusting part, and you need to see this video. I'll put it at the end in the top left hand corner so you can go right to it. But disgustingly, he says this isn't even an Ethiopian, which today are 40 to 50% admixed Caucasians and nowhere near a Negro phenotype like the person talking, and he didn't know they existed in elder times, of course. But he says she is a Sub Saharan Negroid. and that they're symbolic colors. Not that he mentions that black and white, and they use it any which way, and it doesn't mean Negroids. Then he turns around and says that she is actually a Sub-Saharan Negroid.
Right, and she's portrayed with lighter skin, and the guy in the middle is Perseus protecting her from the sea monster. And I appreciate you, Cool 2T, for pointing that out to me.
He really doesn't appreciate it because, ooh, it busted his little jumpy.
But at the same time, my point still stands.
See, he tries to say his point still stood, that Ethiopians are Sub-Saharan Negroids, like he said in the last video, and that he's going to claim this white man. Hold on. A white woman. Hold on.
You see, the Greeks were not overly obsessed with skin tone as we are today. And skin tone to them, or color, was, or sometimes the skin tone was portrayed in a symbolic nature. As we can see, Perseus is a Greek, but he's portrayed with black skin or as a black image.
And so now we can see that this girl that we're fixing to talk about in a minute is making a fool of herself, and he made a fool of himself, but explains it now. That man's a Greek, and they draw in 3 different colors, and since the background here is that pale color, they really can do much more. They have a white, they have a red, they have a black, and they use these 3 colors quite frequently. None of it is about Negroids, but he tries to claim them. I think I'll let it go till he does that, then we'll go watch the girl hang herself.
And Andromeda is portrayed with light skin. You see, the Greeks saw the world in darkness and light, and they portrayed that through their art. And so Perseus was more so viewed as a guy saving her, and he himself was in danger. So that would be more portrayed as a darker image.
And the Greeks and the Minoans and the Etruscans and the Mitanni and all kinds of people around there, along with the Egyptians, draw males in symbolic red ochre color and females in pale color or dark skin tones. And I'm just glad Egypt and nobody decided to use black skin tones and it only shows up in this art. Our blacks would try to claim every civilization. It's amazing that they try to claim every civilization they were attached to, but they never mention West African sub-Saharan primitives of the slave trade that we damn well know that they were. How telling that they can't seem to claim that, but they want to claim anything else. We was Ethiopia, and now we find out Ethiopians are Caucasians all over the place, and Andromeda was a pale white woman, and he's going to say she's a Negro, and then he doesn't say Ethiopian, he says Sub-Saharan Negro.
And Andromeda, in all her pureness and in her light, might have been portrayed as a lighter image, but we all know she was an Ethiopian. And like I said many times, Ethiopians to the Greeks were Sub-Saharan Africans.
And so he just hung himself with the retard of Doi Dun. And so that's about enough of that, and you can see how blacks don't have any clue whatsoever to what they're talking about, and it's all racist, hateful lies, disgusting racist, hateful lies, and they bring it upon themselves, for we just saw that Sub-Saharan Africa doesn't exist. There are brown splotches all up here in the Scythians area, even in the Caucasus Mountains themselves, and none of it had to do with Negroids. And then he claims the white woman as an Ethiopian. Then he says the Ethiopians meant Sub-Saharan Negroids. How pathetic. What our third option to describe this vessel, black glaze, this term softens the modern racial thinking by enabling a focus on material composition. Makes black people feel a lot better, and then maybe if we said it that way, they won't try to claim we was. The description recognizes color, but does not subscribe to any color-based hierarchy. Oh, yeah, just using the word black, oh man, oh, they can't handle it. They told us what to call them, and then after years later, they definitely don't want to be called that. Oh, the N-word, don't want to use that, but they use it against themselves constantly. It's pathetic to watch. Yeah, they've made this secret word they think they have power over or something, and it's gotten quite disgusting. Although it is naive to imagine that the black glazed face paired with full lips and broad nose does not invoke comparisons with real people, I would argue that black glaze is preferable because it extends beyond its modern political counterpart, black. The hyphen emphasizes that it's artificial status, that it's really just a glaze. So it may not be a Negro. Is that what she's saying? Like the other art that she knows damn well isn't Negroes? I don't know, it's strange. The label reflects artistic license rather than historical prejudices. And no, man, you can use any which word you want. If blacks can't handle it and just lose their minds and, oh my God, he said a word that means something about my skin. Oh, I'm going to cry and throw a fit. Then maybe we can see that someone has a mental problem and can't quite get over it. And to start changing colors, and no longer are crayons going to be listed the same thing. Black crayons are now called Sub Saharan African crayons. What are we going to do? Well, we're not going to do any of that. That would all be foolish to attempt anything, and this has all gotten quite silly at the same time as disgusting and racist. Now let us contextualize the description of this picture. The Getty Vala's label tells us that occasional scenes on Athenian vases show Africans as slaves, and this is stereotype representation combines servants and serving vessel. Art historian Francois Legray interprets the black glazed faces on other drinking cups and pitchers as servants in the symposium. And this is a serfdom where these people are out in the sun all day, and they're going to be shown as being that worker, and the pale people aren't going to be shown as much. So let's look at this vase, and what we notice here is that, well, on the right side looks something extremely similar to the other vase that we were looking at, a prognostic jaw, big lips, and so on. And the one on the right must be somewhat a Negroid, but the one on the left looks like that Ethiopian we were just talking about, and ironically, it's a Caucasian woman, as you can easily see. And she's drawn with that red ochre color that's exactly the same color the Egyptians use. And they have noted long ago that even her hair right here, which it is rubbed off, was red. And you can still see some areas of it here. So it's not really a question as to the ethnicity of these people, the Greeks, and these people, which would be a Negroid looking type or an admixed Ethiopian perhaps. For that's what they'd pretty much run into by this time, if any. And, yeah, form of two heads, blah, blah, blah. Some literary evidence supports this claim. One of the character sketches in the late 4th century BC Theophrastus character describes a black person as an exotic servant for a petty man. So, wow, a black person is even a servant for a petty man. Wow, I wouldn't have put that in there. But other ancient Greek texts contradict this characterization. Homeric epics describe black people as semi-divine creatures whose country was a relaxing oasis for the gods. No, that was the Caucasian Ethiopians. And now we can see that black people weren't some relaxing oasis for the gods, and they didn't even know these gods, the Romans, existed in any way, shape, or form. How disgusting for her to try to put that together. Furthermore, visual references on ancient Greek vases depict black people in numerous roles: political allies, musicians, religious worshipers, soldiers, and servants. And none of those are black people usually. It's the same art symbology that I've been showing you. For here's one right here. And Attic White. It is dangerous to fold selective history into the discussion without any reflective comments about the speculative work at play here. And it's probably dangerous to try to have selective history and put comments together and try to assert blacks into a people that they never even knew. But it gets worse. Although it is plausible that some black people were slaves in the 5th century BC, there is no sure sign that this was the case in all situations. Hell, we might have been kings. Again, no primitive was treated as a gracious thing, for they were primitive, low IQ, pre-Stone Age level whenever we'd run into them, and no one's going to try to change history except for her and expose herself. The need for careful treatment of black people in the ancient Greek art extends beyond this picture. No, there's no need for careful treatment of black people. This whole gotta coddle them and everything. Oh my gosh, they're gonna freak out. Coddle them is really just about run its course, and it shows its disgusting nature. On the cover of the Roman history book, Benjamin Isaac's 2004 book, The Invention of Racism in Classical Antiquity, a troubling scene encourages anachronistic representations. And so what we're seeing here is a darkened image of Hercules in battle and a bunch of Caucasian Egyptians. Yeah, but the ones that are attached to his arms are turned black. What could that possibly mean? Here we are confronted with a depiction of a violent encounter between a man and 6 other men. The person in the middle of the scene looms large and distinct. His upright pose and stark nakedness stand in sharp contrast to the close people in contorted positions around him. She's going to try to get you to think this was a black man. There are other visual clues that suggest his dominance. All of the men who came into the contact with him either writhe under his feet or are firmly in his grasp. There are no match for his strength. He plows through them without hesitation. Yet that's Hercules, the Caucasian, and those are Caucasian Egyptians. And wow, look at this Negro go. Perhaps in collaboration with Isaac, Princeton University publishers this book chose this image as the cover for important contribution to the discussion of racism and antiquity, to expose that the Egyptians were Caucasians, and the fact that they show maybe even Hercules in black doesn't mean anybody was a Negroid, and that kind of exposes that, I guess, simply right there. This artistic rendition is based on a modern illustration of a 6th century BC black figure Hydra water jar. So now she tries to discount it, and we're about to see the real one. This impressive vase can currently be seen at Getty Center in the exhibition Beyond the Nile, Egypt and the Classical World. It depicts Heracles as he resists Egyptian attempts to sacrifice him under the order of the Egyptian king Bosiris, which is like Osiris. Yep, so what is she going to try to pull? Caucasian Egyptians, Caucasian Greeks. Bosiris received a prophecy that stipulated the sacrifice of a foreigner in order to stop the drought that was destroying his city. When Heracles entered Egypt, Bosiris tried to slaughter him, but the Greek hero fought back and eventually escaped. It's not like there weren't boats showing up every day, but yeah, okay, so there's an idea in mythology. And now what we see is that the original picture here, if I zoom in on it, is that even though he looked black, he was actually red ochre, and it's rubbed off. You can see that, right? There's some red ochre. She makes a mention of it in a minute. And now we also notice that the blackened figures here, the reason they drew them pale before is that they can tell that all the paint came off of the blackened area. You can see this arm behind this other arm that is whitened with black fingers, and that's this guy's arm and everything. Oh, okay, so and he is that pale color, and it didn't rub off, and he is that pale color, and he is that pale color, and he rubbed off, but damn if he doesn't have red hair. And so does this one over here have red hair, and this one here has blonde hair, and this one still has the white face on him, and this one has red hair. And how does that all work out for those Caucasian Egyptians and those Caucasian Greeks? Down here in the bottom, a warrior is drawn with red hair but black skin. Down here, a warrior is drawn with a helmet that's not colored and pale skin. And none of these have to do with Negroids. This is the whole Boer symbology and things. But here, let's look at something real quick so people aren't misconstruing this idea I keep saying, Caucasian Egyptians, which it shows right there how pale they are. Look at this man. We type in blue-eyed Egyptians because this pretty much covers it all in one shot. What we see here, whenever we open it up, right off the bat, is these incredible blue-eyed Egyptians. And it's amazing. They have these crystals that they make into their eyes, and it looks real, and they follow you around the room. And from different angles, they're blue, but gray, but blue, but gray, and it's kind of odd. Some go blue to violet, and there's a whole string of these. and scribes too that come from the earliest of dynasties. Like Horaha is supposed to be this guy right here is supposed to be the second pharaoh ever. Now it's found, I think, in a 12th century tomb, or a 12th dynasty tomb, sorry. But if we look at all of these and the amount that are in there, and this is Mitri the scribe, and so you can look into the eyes of an ancient Egyptian, and we don't need to look at the art and how the women are pale and the men are red, exactly like Greek and Minoan and Etruscan art. And there will be no, that I think may be a Negro. It could be, or this from the earliest of dynasties. And here we see Horaha in that gray state. Well, this eye's kind of blue, so you can tell at an angle it fades off. But then also, the earliest pre-dynastic statues we find are this Caucasian phenotype with blue eyes, and that's Naoko series, pre-dynastic. They have the mummy Ginger, and it's a natural mummy before they ever mummified anything. Pre-dynastic Egypt, and Ghibelline mummy. And it's called Ginger because he's a pale man with blonde hair. And that also is, again, telling. This is Nofred, and she's pale with her blue eyes. And there are about 16 of them that have those crystal blue eyes. And is that, oh, there was only 16 white people? No, sad Negro, please quit. For there's another one. And it goes on and on and on, but worse than that, they have found that a lot of these old statues here, they had Egyptian blue on the eyes, and they could never see it. There was little smudges of paint left, and oh, it looks so dark. Well, what is it? Well, on the eyes, there's blue eyes. They have blue eyes. Yeah, those amazing Caucasian Egyptians, and there's a bunch of them with red hair, like Ramses. And all of these right here that you can see that are shown with red hair, and they look at them, they all have Caucasian hair, and it doesn't have anything to do with Negroids. And it really, really has nothing to do with West African primitives who didn't even know it existed. But they are the ones that are getting on the sites and trying to tell you we wasm isms. And it's disgusting. Yeah. So another early scribe. And scribes are passed by son to son and so on. And there's also Nefertiti, and it's hard to make out, but she's got kind of a hazel blue eye too. And boy, they threw a fit whenever the recreation of her hat came out. But yeah, Caucasian Egyptians. And you can see on the walls, and they always show you these tan people, but look, they have blonde hair. Yeah. And of the earliest dynasties, this is no, oh yes, later Whitey came in, blah, blah, blah. No. There was never a Negroid there. No, the 25th dynasty. We're so much past that. Please don't try to bring that up as a boon. First of all, you aren't related to Nubians. Nubians are not the Cushites, and the Cushites were the people that did that. And it's described in the Bible as Ethiopians, and that might give you a clue on who they were talking about for the biblical Ethiopian. And the Greek one I just showed you has nothing to do with Negroids whatsoever. So let's go back and let her end this with no dignity whatsoever, but try to claim ancient art. And so we can tell that this Caucasian Greek is fighting a Caucasian Egyptian. So why do they show them that color? Because they use colors any way they want to. They didn't know about Negroids then, and they never thought that they would later claim out and go, oh, you know those primitives that didn't know any of that existed? We is them claiming. We're going to say it's us. They have no thought that would have ever happened, or they would never done it. In fact, we're so glad that the Egyptians did mummify themselves, because now we can see their hair and everything, and so that really was out. But now they've done the DNA of them, and it shows even Western European hunter-gatherers that had come into there, like we've been talking about, of the Badarians and the Kata culture, and then the Tufians that were out in the edge of the Levant, and the Maghreb, and people of North Africa, Berbers, and the people of the Green Sahara and the Gobero area that are all Caucasians too. So I can show you about that. And I'm about to do a video exposing what the Sahara used to look like, and what's been misconstrued from what science can just show us it used to look like, and even when it was green. and how it ran through that from like 14,000, 20,000, 14,000 BC up, turn green and go away, but it's quite revealing. Although the visual similarities between the cover and the water vessel above are striking, the ancient image follows a more sophisticated approach to skin color than the book cover's partial or rendering of the scene. On the vase, black skin is capacious and flexible. It is not limited to those near Hercules. Actually, all of those skins used to be painted white. You can see now, and there are little flecklets all over the place, and it's white over the top of the black, so it takes good. You can tell whenever they do that and make it white, like for other things, that it looks different. So they have applications that they use. Again, none of it's about Negroids, but oh man. The crouching Egyptian priest on the far left of the altar, as well as the Egyptian with raised hands to the right of the altar, have black skin. The black lines framing the scene of the black pattern designs on opposite sides. The scene also destabilize any quick interpretations of the color in antiquity. So she wants to say that, it's confusing, we was Greeks. The fear of the 9 men is palpable. One has even climbed on top of the altar meant for Hercules to be killed upon. And to add to the final twist, Hercules' skin tone on this jar is dark red. Oh, she does mention that it wasn't even black like in the other one, but it's dark red. Okay, so, oh my gosh, Caucasian Greeks look red ochre, darker than the Egyptians, and the Egyptians were drawn as lighter, like down here that she tries to almost cut off, and the red-headed guy, and yeah, and the priest that's been down, and she says, oh, the black man, and he's got white arms and white on his face, still existive. There's flecklets still on this man's face. There's flecklets on this man's face. Oh wait, that's red here too. It looks like most of these people are red-headed Egyptians. Oh, wouldn't that be something? And a redhead there too. So there are numerous examples of this sacrificial scene on ancient Greek pottery, and we're about to expose ourselves, aren't we? Another depiction portrays Hercules as a figure whose skin color does not differ from those around him. And they're still just all Caucasians. Yeah. And it's funny, they draw the Egyptians as being all skinheads, and yeah, they did shave themselves. So they kept themselves shaved, so they show that. But they've almost got that face that looks like Socrates or something. And yeah, here's the aegis and the gold and the lion and everything. And I've had people say, oh, this is a Negro. Hercules is a Negro. And it's like, please stop. On this 5th century BC storage jar, Hercules on the left of the altar again uses his sheer strength to punish the Egyptians, but there's a difference in awareness of color dynamics at play in this jar. Rather than depicting of Hercules with black skin, which they never did, and in fact she just mentioned it was red ochre skin, that was a farce of ever showing it with black skin, and please don't try to ever equate it to a Negro. But instead of black skin, blackness dominates the background of this vessel. Hercules' black hair and black beard set him apart from the bald and clean-shaven Caucasian Egyptians. This does not mean, however, that this chromatic appearance is particularly important in the scene. Instead, blackness literally fades into the background. Negroes are fade. It offers a visual palette for powerful scene rather than a reflection of color-based power dynamics. Hercules, the Caucasian, uses a lion skin in the aegis, and that hooks up to Colchians and everything, and they said the Colchians were the Egyptians, and hey, he said, they have darkened skin and curly hair, but that's nothing new to anybody different around here. Hell, everybody's got curly hair and tanned. What makes them different, and that I can see it, is the way they do fabrics, and they do have certain ceremonies and practice circumcision, like Ethiopians do. And blacks go, oh, no. See, again, we showed Ethiopians, and it had nothing to do with you. Please quit thinking a modern-day place of Abyssinia that has been renamed makes all of a sudden half Caucasian mixed Negroids into we was. And also, West African primitives aren't related to them and didn't know they existed, so they definitely weren't. Let's continue. In addition, the physiognomy of Hercules marks him as distinct from the Egyptians. No, it doesn't. It just shows he's strong, and hell, he's supposed to be a god. These are just priests. But what do they try to say? His long nose and thin lips stand in contrast to their broad noses and full lips. Man, they got little bitty noses. Yeah, they got little bitty noses. Yeah, non-prognostic jaws. That's disgusting. Yeah, looks more like Socrates than anything. Wow. Blacks try this. They go, look, it's Caucasians, right? So, we some blackums. Altogether, it is undeniable that the image on Isaac's cover represents an ancient representation of Hercules, the Caucasian, and Caucasian Egyptians. But the cover art is also eerily reminiscent of contemporary discourse about blackness. No, it doesn't have anything to do with black people, but she wants to make it about her. In particular, it suggests a dangerous connection between violence and the modern black male body. No, we all know damn good and well that this is Hercules and he's a Caucasian and doesn't have anything to do with it. So what are you going to cover it up with? This cover misleads anyone interested in ancient discussions of black skin because the contents of the book do not adequately address this topic. No, they don't need to go in the front and go, yeah, you might think that's a Negro being violent just because the way that it goes on so much and they cause so much crime and everything, but it's not. He's a whitey. Now, which one of those is racist? Please stop. This omission encourages viewers and readers to assume that this image is an accurate representation of black people in great antiquity. No, only a black person would try to put themselves as being a Greek god. And we damn well know it. And so exposing again, and the whimper whine, and don't say the color, and oh my God. Barring the caption on the back of the book, the image is presented without context. Oh, so he even talks about it on the back of the book. Why are you yipping? Do you want him to put it on the front of the book and arrows pointing at it and say, not Negro? Is this what you wanted? Oh, just don't use the picture of Greeks and make black people eat. No, I'm sorry. We're tired of catering to you and your wine. It has nothing to do with you. Gosh, please quit. The people who judge books by their covers will jump to an inaccurate conclusions. No, blacks might try to jump to an inaccurate conclusion, but nobody else would. The permanently violent coating of black skin color is incorrect and irresponsible. There are no historical roots tracing this presumed innate threat. Yeah, the blacks aren't in Greeks or in Egypt whatsoever. They weren't even allowed. Nubians weren't even allowed in Egypt. Whenever it shows them paying homage, that had to have happened up in Icon. If you look at the Semna Stele of Sensuret III, it clearly denotes they're not allowed. It does say they'll never come down the river forever and all kinds of things, but whatever. In sum, museum and academic scholars are key players in the fight for contextualized and inequitable perspectives of black people in antiquity. No, I mean, man, that doesn't have anything to do with black people. Please stop. You're just making yourself into a pathetic circus. Pay attention to me. It's all about me, and none of it is. Preconceived notions about black people are seared into our country's collective consciousness without an overhaul of the black slaves in perpetuity trope. Damaging stereotypes become ossified as facts for future generations. No, there are a lot of people that don't even know about that very much, and they see black crime around them. They see that 13% is actually causing well over 15% of the crime, and that sounds bad enough for it's like 5 times the amount of what they're supposed to be, in proportion. But the sad thing is whenever you add it all up, it ends up being only 6% are males, and really only about 3.5% are the age 15 to 45, and that gets bad. Brief examination has revealed ancient Greek art to be an expansive landscape. Ancient Greek's visual heritage included representations of black people that nimbly provoked and cut across hierarchies. No, it didn't. You're lying. Objects like the 6th century BC